Hello everyone, this is Eli Beauchamp with another episode of Immigration, the Colombia Factor. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like and share the video. On the previous episode, I spoke a little bit about what life was like for me living in a third world country and what life is really like for the citizens of third world countries that seek and choose to migrate illegally to first world countries such as Canada and in this case, the United States. You would be shocked to find out that this is pretty much a scam. They use political persecution, human and civil rights violations as an excuse to come to our country. But 80% of asylum seekers go on vacation to their home country. Do they really need to come here illegally? No, but they choose to. Most of them are the ones that probably voted for their dictator, president, supreme ruler in charge of the country at the time that they're migrating. Just to give you an example, Colombia, right? This is Immigration, the Colombia Factor, right? At the beginning of this year, for a couple months, it was Mexicans that had the most illegal migration into the U.S. And now we hear a lot about Venezuela and Venezuelan gangs, right, on the news, and Venezuelan immigrants. They were not the ones that were immigrating here illegally the most. Many of them were already here. It was actually Colombians. Can you believe that? That for a month or two, Colombians were the ones that were immigrating the most at the beginning of this year, 2024, to the U.S. illegally. But why? Very simple. They elected a dictator. They elected a pedophile, a guerrilla rebel that worked with narco trafficking groups to get elected. That's who they voted for. Guess what? It was Generation Z that wanted some change, and they brought Gustavo Petro, the new president of Colombia, aka new dictator in South America, to power. And if you look at the statistics for a month or two at the beginning of this year, of the Colombian migrants that were immigrating here illegally, most of them were the young people. So they vote for a dictator, they vote for a certain party or ruler or president, and then they just pack up and go. And where do they want to go? No, they don't want to go to the Congo. They don't want to go to Haiti. They definitely don't want to go to Cuba either. And they're not migrating to their neighbor in Venezuela. Those young Colombians, they wanted to come to the U.S. Now, let's move into more information for today's episode. So I have called this online miniseries Immigration, the Colombia Factor, right? And I've been talking quite a bit that the mainstream media does not know this, and if they know, they don't want to talk about it. I'm sure New Borders R. Tom Holman might know. If he doesn't, hopefully he'll watch this video. Hopefully our leaders will hear what I have to say. Some numbers, right? Venezuela has about 27 million citizens. Many of them have left the country. Roughly 8 million, possibly. Those are the estimates. Colombia has about 3 million of them, give or take. The United States has a lot of millions of Venezuelans that are here. Some of them under immigration program, others here legally. They're all criminals because they all cross our border illegally, at least the ones that cross our border illegally. Some did come in illegally. We got to say that, right? But if Venezuela has about 26 million, give or take, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less citizens, you'll be shocked to find out that Colombia has 52 million citizens, give or take. So that's almost double the population of Venezuela. Now, Colombia chose to vote for change. They voted for a dictator, a left-wing lunatic by the name of Gustavo Petro. Now, Colombians are under the notion, just like Venezuelans were back in the day, they say, oh, we'll never be like Cuba. Just like a lot of liberals in the U.S. said, oh, the United States will never be a socialist country. Well, that's what Venezuelans said. And here they are. Well, Colombians think the same thing. They think, oh, we'll never be Venezuela. We're too good for it. But the dictator that they voted for already controls their lower chamber, which is called the same thing as the United States, the House of Representatives. He controls their Senate. They're bought and paid for. He controls their Supreme Court, the Attorney General. He controls what we would call Antifa here. And in a country of 52 million, 50,000 young looters and criminals is almost like an army. So he controls them. He took out all the generals from the army. He reduced the Colombian army to almost nothing. And he controls the army now. And on top of it, he was elected by the narco trafficking groups, by the drug cartels. So he controls them. They have a lot of foot soldiers also, possibly more than 10, between 10 and 20,000. Those are some rough estimates, and I'm putting all the groups into one. He also controls the paramilitary groups that were extinct. And now they're resurging again. He controls the guerrillas, the rebel groups. FARC? No peace process. They're not gone. They're still around. There are actually 4 different groups that came from it. EPL and ELN guerrillas. They have a lot of foot soldiers. Now, you don't hear in America, they're all complaining about genocide in Palestine. You don't hear Americans or the mainstream media talk about all the children that are being kidnapped by the rebels, by the guerrillas in Colombia. Every day I see my Facebook feed, dozens of young girls and young boys being kidnapped. And many of them are actually being human trafficked, smuggled into the U.S., or sexually trafficked. If you watch the movie Sound of Freedom, you might understand what I'm talking about. One of the epicenters of human slavery and human sex trafficking is in Colombia. But the mainstream media doesn't care about it. See, Colombians are amazing people, most of them. They're really good people. Again, don't forget, my wife is half Colombian, my children are half Colombian. But I said on the previous episode that the ones that are bad, they're really bad. They're worse than extreme Islamic terrorists, and you're about to find out why. In Colombia, the new dictator controls everything. So I know Colombians are under the notion, and I pray to God that I'm wrong. For once, I want to be wrong in my life. For the sake of my family, my children, I really want to be wrong. I really hope Colombia does not become a new Cuba. But that's where they're heading. But the most important agency that the new dictator controls, he controls the federal agency in Colombia that counts the votes. He controls their Supreme Court, pretty much every court that Colombia has. The new dictator, Gustavo Petro, he controls it. And then he also controls, again, the federal agency in Colombia that counts the votes. So again, I know Colombians are optimistic. They have elections coming up in 2026. I really hope I'm wrong. But if I'm right, and Colombia is about to become one of the world's worst dictatorships, then Americans better be in for a rude awakening. Because let's say we have 5 million Venezuelans, that's nothing. With double the population in Colombia, we're about to have, in the next 2 to 4 years, over 10 million illegal migrants coming into the country from Colombia. And we're not just going to see them crossing the southern border. They would also be coming through our airports. Because for 20 years, Colombia did pretty good. They had a president that put everything in motion, named Álvaro Uribe Vélez. He kind of fixed their country. And during that time, many Colombians became prosperous. They were able to get tourist visas. These people are going to want to run from a dictatorship. They're not going to stay and fight. So they're going to take their tourist visa, travel to the U.S., and then they're going to stay here illegally. So hopefully, Border Czar Tom Homan, I hope you're watching the port of entries. Every single airport in America should be trying to figure out if they're coming here as tourists. Again, CBP or Border Patrol eyes, they need to be on the lookout. You're on notice. I'm putting you on notice. Because things are going to start getting really bad. Now, the thing is that should scare every American, and this episode is going to go a little longer, is the fact that, remember when I said that they were worse? The people in Colombia, the Colombians that are bad, are worse than extreme Islamic terrorists? That is because extreme Islamic terrorists, we all know, they believe that if they blow themselves up and other people along with them, that they're going to go to heaven and get 70 virgins, right? So they blow themselves up. But Colombian criminals, they don't blow themselves up. They took a young boy, walked him into the middle of downtown, attached a bomb to his chest. One of those vests, right? And they blew him up and killed a bunch of others with him. They attach a bomb to a dog. They attach a bomb to a donkey. They attach a bomb to an elderly lady. And from Pablo Escobar, they learned to attach bombs, obviously, to cars, to motorcycles. And if we have TDA here, and I say TDA, Trinidad from Venezuela, they are babies in diapers compared to Colombian criminals that produce drugs that go into Europe, Asia, and the United States. They manufacture drugs, cocaine, heroin, marijuana. Even farmers are growing marijuana plants and coke plants in Colombia. And the president knows, and he's actually buying it from them. I mean, this guy is a sick man. He's a pedophile. He's a rapist. He's a criminal, and that's who they elected as their president. We better be on the lookout for what's happening. And this is the second last episode of Immigration, the Colombia Factor. I'm sorry that it ran a little bit longer, but our final episode will be out. It will be out right after this episode. I want to move quickly with this because what's coming, it's scary. And it's time for us to open our eyes.